welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 83. In today's episode, it's our second since the rework of our show format, and we're going to be looking at the films of Sang-il Lee. First up, you've probably heard of this movie before. You might have seen that it's currently in theaters. It is now the highest grossing live action Japanese movie of all time, and it is also now Oscar nominated. We're going to be taking a look at the Kabuki theater drama Kokuho. Then we're diving 20 years into the past. We're going to be reviewing an early career film. It's the chaotic crime drama comedy Scrap Heaven. Of course, we're going to also give a mention to all the other stuff we've been watching towards the end of the episode. But before we get into the show proper here, we've got a very exciting announcement to get us started.
Yeah.
We now have an official Theater and Stream letterboxed page. So I will go ahead and link that in the episode description on YouTube. So you can go over there. Please subscribe to that page. Follow us. We'll follow you too. We can kind of hopefully get a little bit of a community going. And from now on, we're basically going to be posting our reviews over there. Basically, just a link to these episodes. But then also, we're going to be reviewing the movies that we watch from now on sort of Letterboxd star rating scale. Both Chuck and I will give our individual ratings, and then we'll kind of give like an aggregate score, the so-called like podcast rating. But yeah, so you can go over there and check that out. Chuck, anything you wanted to say about that?
Just that I've never felt cool enough to actually have a Letterboxd account. So I'm really glad that we have just pulled the trigger and dove in with both feet. Thank you for taking the lead on that. And I just want to say, like let us know what you think about this new format. I am really enjoying it because it harkens back to a time when we were, doing lots of like director, like series where we would do retrospectives on people. And so in a way, like the future of our show is going back to our roots a little bit. And what blows my mind is that I've never heard of this guy until I saw the trailer for Kokuho. And now I'm in deep and I'm a big fan. But Lee Sang-il is a Korean expat who lives in Japan. Is that the origin story? Just to maybe briefly touch on that.
Oh, sure. You would think by his name that he was Korean, but I guess I'm not entirely sure.
I've heard him described as Korean Japanese, or something like that. So, unless I'm misinformed, which is possible. This is the internet,
But yeah, he's been making films in Japanese for like about 25 years now. His career goes back pretty far. And his films are incredibly varied. You'll kind of see especially as we talk about the two we're going to talk about today. But yeah, I don't know. You want to dive in the first one here, Chuck? I'm more interested. People I think are going to figure out as we talk about this film that you sort of were in the bag for this movie. So why don't we start with your thoughts?
Because like my enthusiasm is coming from a place of and I'm really interested to hear your experience, because I think there's something going on here where I was just more willing to just accept the fact that I am not a good judge of whether or not the technical aspects of the Kabuki, or even the artistic aspects of the Kabuki were authentic and successful or meaningful. I was just living in the moment every single time this movie was going into one of its recreations of what I assume to be our really important works within the medium and the genre and whatever. But what I was, caught up in was this epic scope to a story about two guys, who didn't ask for their circumstances in life, and the different ways that they you know, moved forward despite things not going the way they wanted to, or because they can't help but self-sabotage themselves. Because for some reason, it makes their art better on their road to being the national treasure. And I don't know, that it was just such a beautiful movie, and I was so swept up, by it, that I didn't feel its length. And it just, I felt like I was in the hands of a master the whole time. And I was just captured from the front, the tip to tail. I never once felt bored, but I was moved just as much as I was when the first time I saw Departures. And I appreciate both films for much the same reasons, I guess, when you get down to it, because I feel like, and even like Happy End last year, it's like it transcends the alien differences between our cultures, and just totally makes it so that I, an uncultured swine American, can also find beauty in Kabuki, whereas before I just found it goofy and weird. Because yeah, the way that the male performers have to like speak and sing, like it almost sounds like singing. But like, well, I guess what clicked for me as I was watching it was that this is where kayfabe and wrestling comes from. Like that's the professional wrestling. If you appreciate professional wrestling, you can appreciate Kabuki theater, which is insane to me. But yeah, like where did you come from? Or like, how did you approach it, and how did you walk away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with you as far as, yeah, just it's so beautiful, and I didn't feel the length either. I thought that this is one of the few movies that sort of justified its length because it's doing what would normally be a very like typical thing in these movies of its sort, where it's doing sort of a rise, fall, rise of not just one character, but two characters, where both of these guys kind of have that similar trajectory where that you see a lot in like biopics, you see a lot in dramas about like a single individual. Um, the problem that I had, and it's not even a problem with the movie, I should just say off the top necessarily. It's almost a problem with myself or just kind of the person I am viewing this movie, because it's almost like I feel unqualified to
Yeah,
talk about it because it's so steeped in its culture. It's so honed in on a particular subject that when the names of the Kabuki plays flash up on the screen, and then it gives you the little sort of like one sentence descriptor for what this play is about. I found myself at a loss for, what was happening and how this ties into the themes of the movie, if it even does tie into the theme of the movie. And I found myself wondering, do people in Japan understand what's going on here? Is our Kabuki plays as pervasive in Japan as something like Shakespeare would be here in the West? Like as far as like, does a Japanese person see the Love Suicides, which is one of the plays that they put on, and do they have sort of the cultural awareness to know what's happening or know the correlation with the subtext of the movie? And then it also extends to like what is meant to be portrayed as good and
hmm,
bad Kabuki, as far as like Ken Watanabe, he's like scolding and praising Kiku and Shinsuke, and for their form or their line delivery, and I'm at a loss for what I'm supposed to be looking for or what I'm supposed to be listening for. I don't know what makes good or bad, and there are moments in the movie where we're supposed to be watching this performance that like Kiku is giving, and it's supposed to be something that's transcendent, like something that is absolutely just like he's murdering the play, like he's doing so well, and you're just kind of like, I'm just kind of like, I guess I don't understand why this is so good, other than the fact that the swelling score is telling me, or the facial expressions of the people
Yeah,
in awe in the audience. And so,
because it's like
so that's kind of,
the Japanese approach to art is almost like there is a mathematical
yeah.
algorithmic, way of calculating its refinement and its excellence. Like you,
Mhm.
and that almost does seem to be the way that they approach it, even culturally. And that's why, yeah, it's like you only get to do certain plays if you are of a certain status, if you're of a certain house, with
Mhm.
aggregate career that measures up to being able to do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's a good question. Is like maybe why this movie is resonating so much in its native country, is because there maybe was a lost connection with it, in maybe in a more broader sense. This is bringing people back home. It's like I won't actually go to a kabuki theater performance, but I'll reconnect with it culturally through this movie. It's more accessible in that way, because yeah, the beginning of this movie is a yakuza gangster, like revenge story, like seemingly with like, until it completely just veers off straight into the kabuki land and never leaves there. Like, I appreciated the fact that the yakuza origin story was just like a millstone around his neck as far as what he really wanted for himself, and we didn't have like a moment where it was like, you have to come back and reclaim your father's throne. They didn't turn into a yakuza movie again later. Like
Yeah.
it had its identity and it stuck to it. And
Well, yeah, I appreciate it for that too, as far as, this is again, like a movie that's 175 minutes, and it justifies all of that while staying in just completely honed in on the world of Kabuki.
it could
If
have been
this movie,
longer. Like,
yeah, and
yeah,
from what I understand, the first cut of this movie was about 4.5 hours, is what I've heard. And so,
glorious.
um, but yeah, I mean, if this movie were to be made in like America, we would have all of the stuff with like his home life too, and how he's, not connecting with his wife or not connecting with his kid. And we'd have all that stuff. And this movie is so honed in on just the Kabuki aspect, where it's like, I think 90% of this movie just literally takes place either on a stage or behind a stage, it seems
Yeah,
like. And so, yeah, it's pretty amazing that it can pull off that kind of magic trick, as far as not, you don't feel the length. And yeah, what kind of stood out to you as far as like scenes, standout scenes, or like things you wanted to call out about in this 3 hour film?
the it's funny, but it's the what happens in the beginning and then what happens at the end. Like,
Yeah.
the because you have his like amateur performance at like that New Year's party that turns into like a war zone, but then there's his encounter with Kiku's daughter at the end. And have you ever seen the movie Vox Lux? Brady
I
Corbett.
haven't, no. I
Okay,
know what it is, but I haven't, no.
so it has the most like, I don't think that this movie is doing exactly what Vox Lux does, because I think culturally, what the devil is between the two cultures maybe is a little different. But in Vox, I'm just trying to talk here, dude. In Vox Lux, Natalie Portman's character survives a school shooting and makes a deal with the devil so that she can have like a famous pop music career. And you like
Okay.
find out at the end that like the performance she's giving is basically, like a way to ensnare the millions of people, by Satan. But
Hmm.
both characters have this moment where they reveal in both movies, oh, by the way, I've been able to get this far because I made a deal with the devil. Like that made me laugh, because I was like, I don't think they were trying, like they were all inspired by the other. But Just that notion. It's like being at the crossroads. Like, is it Robert Johnson, the guitar player? And
Yeah.
making it's like, and if you truly believe that you've done that, what would that drive you? Yeah, like, would that not maybe explain some of the antisocial behavior that we see from Kuko in this movie?
Yeah, that I was fascinated by that stuff, all of the stuff with like that scene where he's like praying in front of the shrine and then he explains to his daughter that he's literally he's praying to the devil and not God. It was so like chilling, and it's interesting because the movie doesn't explore the supernatural really at all. I mean,
Not at all. Yeah.
we never get any indication that, the devil is real or he actually did really like make a deal with the devil. It's almost as if he's just trying to use that as a way to like motivate himself or to sort of like, oh, I made a deal with the devil, now I have to succeed, or
Yeah.
like I have
Because
to.
I am
It's
going
all
to hell.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I must take full advantage of this because I made this deal.
Oh,
And so yeah, that was really interesting.
well, in the scene where what with the other guy's name, I can't remember it.
Shinsuke
Shinsuke, when he's like,
or Shunsuke.
I want to drink your blood. Like,
Yeah.
I want you in me. Because I want to, like, I want to, because he can't overcome who his daddy was, even though the yakuza who was raising him wasn't his, like, biological father either, from what I gathered. So yeah, it's a rags to riches story, but
Mhm.
in a weird way, like, this is the Kabuki version of Marty Supreme. You know,
Mm.
you know, I'm being a little facetious, but not really, because they're wildly different movies. But like
Mhm.
this like in the '60s setting, for like until we get closer to the modern day, like, it did do a good job of gradually progressing, and without it being a little hokey or hackneyed, like, and maybe we didn't, yeah, because like there's no like needle drops or like dumb stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even even that would make sense to a Japanese person.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
it,
the capturing of the different time periods was awesome
very
because
effective, all just in the dressing, basically. Yeah,
yeah, the dress and some of the buildings and stuff, and they definitely captured the thing that I really noticed was the like complete stark switch from like antiquated Japan to modern Japan that happened in the 90s as
yeah.
like Japan rapidly industrialized. They captured that so much in the film where it was like, oh, it's 1995 and suddenly everything looks different, and that was really cool. And um I wanted to hone in specifically on the, I guess it's the penultimate scene of the film, with Kiku and his daughter, and when she's the one who's, you find out as an audience member that she is the one giving him the interview. And I want to know because I think that is open to interpretation, that whole scene, as far as what he is talking about, as far as what she is talking about. There is so much to take from that if you want to take many different meanings from it. So what did you make of that? Like, as far as what he was saying about, I'm looking for a particular visual scene, and then he says like it's hard to describe. Like, he basically he can't describe what he means. And what did you take away from that?
Like, and I think it kind of gets confirmed, like, a little later, where Ayano herself describes what watching her father perform, like, looks like what he was evoking. This was his confirmation that he had succeeded.
Hmm.
At that particular visual scene being the moment his life changed forever, and he was irrevocably put on the path towards that moment. The wanting to capture the loss of his father, the snow, the recurring visual of the snow falling in the air. It's like he just wants to and then maybe this could be, like someone in who knows better in the comments can correct me, but I guess maybe this is what Kabuki is supposed to be about doing, is capturing a moment through a larger performance. Because it's all very, baroque and esoteric. It's like very metaphorical looking half the time. Like it's not really explicit what's happening half the time, but it's this weird mixture of ballet and like, yeah, and I guess like, yeah, Shakespeare, but there's something about the rigidity of it. It's like you are basically a living painting or like a wood engraving, every time that you are on stage performing. And it's, I don't know, maybe we should watch like what's that fucking musical called, Sundays in the Park with George,
Yeah.
like that kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, I really I think it all comes back to the relationships that Kiku has with women throughout the movie because I had said earlier how you don't get a lot of his home life, but you do get enough that you realize that every single relationship that Kiku has with a woman is either strained or just flat out bad or
Yeah,
non-existent, where
or
you
completely
don't even,
transactional.
yeah,
Yeah,
like um he has no I don't think his mother is like even mentioned in the movie. Like we don't know where she is, what happened to her. She's just non-existent. His first girlfriend, of course, leaves him for his best friend after she becomes sort of second fiddle in his life to his career. His geisha lover, Fujikoma, she gets pregnant and then he sort of abandons her. His second wife is forced to choose between, her family and Kiku, and she chooses Kiku at first and then eventually leaves him. And then his daughter, of course, is also abandoned. And so, oh, and Ken Watanabe's wife hates him
yeah.
because she stole his family name. So it's there's this constant theme of him having bad relationships with women, and I almost feel as if, when it doesn't happen naturally, he's almost engineering it to happen that way. There's like that. There was this very weird when he first decides to sleep with the what's the theater's
Yeah,
daughter
yeah.
of the theater owner or whatever that guy was. He has like this weird look on his face where he like looks back at her and he's almost considering, he's like, okay, what am I gonna do here? And he sort of makes his decision then, and it's almost like he engineers these things to happen. And I think that it all kind of comes back to how the idea of suffering for your art. And there's a lot of credence given to that idea, even in modern times, like with modern actors, where you must suffer for your art or else you're not taking it seriously. And it's almost like he needs to like screw up all these relationships with his women so he can understand like how to suffer being a woman, like as he portrays a woman on the stage. And
Mm.
I just found that idea really fascinating.
It would explain a lot. Yeah, like this
Yeah.
is his method,
Mhm.
of because he had a rigid taskmaster, who like would call him out if he didn't believe it. Every time that he was giving a performance or training. So yeah, eventually it's like the desperate measures, and it's partly survival too. He just wants his career's in the shitter. How can he guarantee himself a role? And it's like, well, I guess I'll bang the boss's daughter.
Yeah.
Like everyone's had to make that decision a time or two, I suppose.
But yeah, it was, yeah, I mean overall just fantastic film, I thought. And I wish I could have seen it. This movie played in IMAX on IMAX screens for one night only last Friday. I wish I could have seen it in IMAX. That would have been nice, but
Incredible, yeah.
yeah, it would have been just fantastic. But yeah, I think unless there's anything else, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we moved on to the next one?
Uh, just the acknowledgement that I forgot to even run this video, so now I'm gonna have fun in editing,
Oh.
laying it down on repeat on top of it. because now we can move on to the flashback portion of the episode where we talk about Scrap Heaven, which is almost like untilled earth when it comes to like YouTube film commentary. There's exactly one other person out there that has any clips of this movie that are in high definition. And
Wow.
his whole video was kind of chopped up and used by me. So I should acknowledge him for making that available, because the only trailer I could find for this thing was in 240p and looks like complete ass. But what a wild, like, 2005 coded movie. Why don't you introduce it?
Yeah, so this is definitely, I mean, this is where, his inner Gen Xer comes out because in 2005, of course, we are seeing people who are taking their influences from the directors of the late 90s and the early 2000s. So what I was most reminded of course, was probably David Fincher. This movie shares a lot of DNA with Fight Club,
Mm-hmm.
but then also like Tom Tykwer or like Larry Clark. I definitely saw some influences there. But it's sort of this, I guess, simmering malaise of Gen X, who are often called the lost generation because they hardly ever get talked about. And you feel that, it's sort of, it is sort of like the Japanese Fight Club in a way, where it's like we're gonna replace all of the Caucasian urban blight of America with like the sanitized perfection of metropolitan Japan. And I think both are kind of unsettling in their own ways. And we're going to replace the unfulfilled office drone worker from Fight Club with the, suicidal salaryman of Japan. But otherwise, I think the premise is kind of the same, where it's sort of this generational rage that is channeled into subversive activities to sort of quote unquote make life worth living, or make yourself have a meaningful life. And I think I would have jived more with this movie if I would have seen it when it came out in 2005, because I would have been 16 years old
You would
and
have been
I would have
so
been like,
fucking hip, dude.
yeah,
You
I
would
would
have
have
been.
been just so, yeah, it would have been just like, it would have been my bag. And but I think it's a little quaint nowadays, where it's like, oh my God, I'm having an existential crisis because I'm middle class. Oh no, it's like, compared to some of the problems that people have today, as sort of the middle class disappears and the divide between the haves and the have-nots is increasingly wider. It seems a little quaint to me, but all around, I mean, a fun movie. I mean, pretty fun movie. But yeah, what did you think?
Because I'm a Fight Club guy. All right,
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
I I'm in deep with Chuck Palahniuk. But what I think really differentiates the characters from their analogs in Fight Club, in Scrap Heaven, the is the fact that they're all real. Like no one's hallucinating anybody, and there's there's something like actually sympathetic about all of them. Like they may embrace subversion and antisocial behavior, and what basically amounts to terrorism, in both cases. But there's something about them that makes you care about them and understand why they're doing it, and or just like the desperation that they're feeling. And like you say, like it kind of comes off as quaint, but like compared to the outright nihilism of Fight Club, I actually found this kind of uplifting. This is like if Fight Club and Pay It Forward had a baby. Like that's kind of what this it kind of comes down to. Yeah, like
Yeah.
shout out this guy's channel. I can't pronounce it and I can't remember what it is, but this guy strictly just talks about Japanese film. And that's
Mm.
exactly what he called this, was like in his like headline blurb, was Japan's answer to Fight Club. And like at the end of the day, like having the main character be a cop who just like can't live up to the fantasy of what being a cop is in his head. Like this scene being recreated right here, for us, where he's having like this idea that he's gonna punch his way out of a problem, like he's in an action movie, and then just hard cut to him snoring on the subway. Like that's the. But then again, like it also has this critical thing at its center, which is the hostage situation on the bus. That was such a tense sequence. And the guy that plays the salary man does an amazing job for like being on screen for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
When you get down to it, like it was such a huge moment, and it's what drives these characters, to do this weird little scheme where they just enact the revenge for hire on people. And and then how it goes wrong. Like another character I really liked, was the chief inspector guy who shows up towards the end because a gun that they've stolen was given to a homeless guy who just like shot 3 people. And he's like, hey, you should just fucking kill yourself. It's like, because the generational conflict of it all. Because you have the one guy who probably, remembers what Imperial Japan was like. Like depending on how old that guy was, he maybe was a child during World War II. So having some of that cultural glue to the notion of you should have some fucking honor, and part of having honor is offing yourself when you fucked up as a way of owning it, like the total ownership of a mistake, and instead not getting the accountability that he's trying to get out of him, by the end of it. I don't know. There's a lot going on in this movie that I think, like we were kind of saying with Kokuho, I can't talk. Like Kokuho. There's some things that we just won't get, and we would need to have, it like it parsed out and its relevance kind of explained. So there was more that I think I lost, in not having like the cultural, context that maybe would make some of this make more sense, or like maybe there's some humor that I'm not picking up on. But overall, as an experience, this was okay. It was a good start. But, as far as us picking him up and watching him, but yeah,
I'm glad you brought up how like all 3 characters are very sympathetic, where you talked about how the police officer, he's stuck in his job. He always gets passed up for transfer, and he's embarrassed by his sort of inability to act.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Shingo is the self-proclaimed anarchist who sort of channels his insecurities into, I guess, his like scheme, and also the fact that he's sort of feels powerless because of his invalid father. And then Saki, the otherwise beautiful woman who's sort of kept at the fringe of society because of her missing eye.
She's a
and you sort of get, and so what I guess maybe we should talk about her for a second. What did you make of her character as far as, she is, I guess, technically sort of the third lead of the movie, but there are long stretches of the movie where she just disappears. In all honesty, she doesn't really share a ton of screen time with, well, definitely not with Shingo, and even with Tetsu. A lot of times she's kind of off on her own. And so what did you make of her character?
Yeah, because she's played by Chiaki Kuriyama, who people probably would recognize. She's the most recognizable face, that the Western audience, has in this movie, because she's been in Battle Royale and Kill Bill.
Yeah.
But as far as her role in this goes, it's like, what if Marla Singer was Tyler Durden? Because she's the one that really has the vision.
Yeah.
When it comes to like getting revenge on society. And I just want to call out this scene in particular that's popping up on screen right now. in this brief moment where she's like testing this like explosive liquid compound she's created. And there's this kid just like sitting on this roof eating a fucking watermelon and like making fun of her because her bomb liquid isn't blowing up. And then when she does throw it and it does explode, like the explosion causes like the film and the projector, this like imagined projector to like kind of like fly off the screen. I don't like, which is so David Fincher that I almost rolled my eyes, but at the same time I appreciated like it's how playful that was, but there wasn't enough of that. Like if you're gonna be doing like the cigarette burn meta shit, like do more of it. Because but I guess maybe that's all that you can afford the effect one time, because this was a very economical movie otherwise.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought she was interesting because we get the one scene of her with her family and how, she's trying to pass off Tetsu as her like boyfriend, and her family, basically trying to make it seem like she did find a man with her family. And but otherwise, I kind of found her at the end of the day sort of like the human plot device for explaining
Exactly.
how,
Yeah.
how they got explosives. But I am glad, yeah, I'm glad that you talked about the look of the film, or you brought that up,
The
because
editing. Oh my
the editing is
god.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I love how, and again, this goes back to just how like mid 2000s coded this movie is. They do the thing where the screen will split into three sections, and then you'll get all three characters side by side by side on the screen, or the editing where
The
uh
transitions, like he did this a
yeah.
lot, where it would
Hmm.
like jump back and forth rapidly between one thing and another before settling on the next segment that you're gonna go on.
Yep.
Like it's all stuff that like I feel like I've seen other people do, but it just felt so fresh in this. And I guess that's that was all like stuff that I really enjoyed, was just how machine gun the editing was, but it was purposeful. Like it's not just chaotic. Like you're being led by the scruff of your neck, along a path, even though
Yeah.
like, and it doesn't feel herky jerky like
Mm.
like something like Natural Born Killers or JFK might.
Oh
Like
yeah, sure.
like because that's the ultimate chaos editing is. And but like I want to talk about this now,
Yeah.
because we began with where the kind of movie he's making today. How did the guy that made Scrap Heaven wind up being the guy making Kokuho, where it's almost like he's making the prestige drama bait, for the Japanese film industry, as opposed to the really subversive, transgressive, like hip, or like,
Mhm.
or is that same spirit still carried forward in what he's doing today in these two films we're talking about? I have to watch his whole filmography now,
Mhm.
because I've enjoyed him so much. But what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like, and again, I'll also say that these are the only two movies of his I've seen. I've looked into his other films. I've watched the trailers for a lot of his other films, and when you look at, sort of the person that he's turned into, and then what this movie is, I feel as if this movie, Scrap Heaven, is sort of him again trying to emulate people, is him sort of like, I'm growing up in the 90s, and I'm going to emulate these American movies I've been seeing, or these, German movies I've been seeing, or whatever. And
Like Remo Laurent. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm going to, this is the movie that I'm going to sort of try and make for you know, my debut, or my near debut. And so I feel as if this movie was him sort of not in his style. He was sort of doing the imitating thing. And then as his career went on, he, of course, he matured. He got more comfortable doing movies in, whatever style he eventually settled into, which I guess would be probably described as like prestige drama. And
He's
I
remade
think that
Unforgiven, for crying out
yeah,
loud.
yeah. And so yeah, he's remade Unforgiven. And then when you look at, as we were trying to decide what movie we wanted to pair with Kokuho, you look at his sort of movies in the late 2000s 2010s, and they are sort of like crime drama movies, that a lot of the types of movies that you would see coming out of South Korea, a
Yeah.
lot of our favorite South Korean movies, they're these crime dramas, these crime thriller movies. And so that's a lot of what he's making now. And so like I said, I think I this movie was just him doing the imitation game, and then he sort of settled into the director he actually is after this.
I that make that makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
I vibe with that, as the kids would say. Now, yeah. So recommend both of them though. I think that goes without saying. You know, they're both very unique, and I'm just very excited to have like a new guy that I'm, in the bag for, because I like
We
yeah.
are as much in the bag for this guy as Tom Cruise is. I don't know
Oh really?
if you've yeah, I don't know if you've seen, you probably haven't seen that, but probably the most famous thing surrounding Kokuho as a movie is this clip that went viral where Tom Cruise hosted a screening of Kokuho in LA, and he did the introduction for it.
No way, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, go back and if you haven't seen that, or if anybody watching who hasn't seen that, go back or go and look that up on YouTube. It's really great. It's Tom Cruise is like fully in the bag for this guy, because he just gives this. He comes into this screening, and I don't think people knew he was going to show up. And he comes into this screening, and Tom Cruise just speaks eloquently about how much he loves Kokuho for like 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel validated now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. But what else have you been watching this week? I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
Because you know, because I guess I kind of dominated it. I'll speak briefly. Ponies on Peacock stands for people of no interest or something like that. Instead of a person of interest, it's a person of no interest. It's a dumb name, but it's a good concept for like the show is a good concept. It's Cold War, Moscow, like the American embassy, which is just, as where the CIA operates out of. And it's about these two women who are the wives of CIA agents who died in a plane crash. And for some reason, they decide that to figure out why their husbands died, they're going to go back into Russia and work for the CIA as people of no interest, because the Russians aren't going to expect them to be spies because they have no training in tradecraft. And it's a fun little period piece, but not really worth your time. I wasted my time on it. But I did not waste my time on. But yeah, go. Sorry if you have a
Oh,
comment.
I was just gonna say, I'm glad that you watched this and you sort of rendered that verdict, because I've sort of been debating. I have Peacock, and I've been debating whether or not I should, turn this thing on or not. The one thing that really like is weird to me about it is the like huge age difference between its leads. I don't know if that's noticeable while you're watching it, but because both of these women they're portrayed as these wives of these dead agents. And Emilia Clarke is like significantly older than what's her name, Haley Lou Richardson, is it? And
Really?
I found that very very weird, where
Yeah,
she's at least a decade older, I think.
yeah. But like it kind of does make sense in how they play each character, because like one is more stuffy, and one
Okay.
is more like younger and carefree, and it explains now that I know about that. It makes her behavior make a lot more sense, and why she is the way she is. So I don't
Sure.
know. Your mileage may vary. Like it's a nice little diversion. It's
Yeah.
nowhere near the like genre defining television we're getting out of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, though. That's my verdict there. Like
Okay.
the way that the first season of that show finished. Have you ever seen the meme of this like Italian guy eating food and being like, I'll take 14 more of those. Like
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
I am. It's like I just want more.
Yeah, and now we should remind people. So you're coming at it from the perspective of you are familiar with the books and
Yes.
you know what's going to happen and stuff. And I'm coming at it from the perspective of I have no idea what's going to happen. I have not read the books. I haven't even looked on like the Wikipedia of the books to see what's going to happen. And so I mean, I largely agree with you. It's such a nice change of pace, the shorter episodes, the limited scope, the sort of hyper focus on these two characters. And yeah, I mean, this is probably the best thing we've gotten in this Game of Thrones universe since probably like season five of Game of Thrones, I would
Yeah.
say. Um, and yeah, it's just like fantastic. And I loved oh my gosh, I loved episode four, the ending of episode four, when they actually have like the gall to use the Game of Thrones music, but in sort of a more actual serious way instead of how it was used earlier in the season. I thought that was played so well.
The Bracken fart. Yeah, like
Mhm.
to put it to poop on it and then be like, oh, you thought we were just being silly this whole time. No, we are gonna give you a fucking great moment.
Mhm.
Baylor Breakspear, may he rest in peace. He had a great run. Unfortunately, from what I hear, we're not going to be getting more of Maker of
Okay.
in season two because they did do something very critically different from the books, which is that Egg ran away and lied about
Mm.
because in the books they just decide to do it, and then Maker gives them his signet ring in case they get in trouble, so that
Okay.
Egg can show and prove that he's a Targaryen. And
Sure.
now they don't have the signet ring, and they're
And
going to
they're kind of like, I mean, he doesn't really, obviously he doesn't give his blessing in the show because I'm assuming in the books he sort of gives his blessing for him to go away,
yeah.
but in the show he's like, it's almost like a Home Alone moment where he's like, egg,
Damn that boy, he's disappeared
yeah,
again.
yeah,
It's and that's what I mean. Like because in Game of Thrones they make everything feel so like larger and like than life, but yeah, like everything is so grounded here. The even the they did kind of cop out the fact that we don't get like like I know that we're all just trying to be inside Dunk's head and his point of view, but the fact that we don't see any of the fight except for like what he experiences himself, like it feels like a cop out just because I wanted to see the full battle of the seven. Like I wanted the trial of the seven. I wanted to see that. But the fact that we like they're committed, to their limited scope. And that's refreshing. And they just need to maintain that because
mhm.
especially if they're going to be freelancing it, because we only got like three fucking novellas that have actually been written, and then it's just like random historical explanations of like things that they were involved in. Like someday, Matt, we are going to get to see Dunk joust Barristan Selmy. Do you know how awesome that's gonna fucking be? I'm not telling you who wins. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
it happens. So you better get excited because it's not gonna be on
Oh, I
screen
am.
for like 20 years. Like
Yeah, probably.
yeah. But like
Well,
I hate to bring this up, especially because
yeah.
like this isn't our typical. Like we just have some time to play with, and this is breaking current events as far as when we record. What does Paramount succeeding in their buyout of
Mhm.
Warner Brothers do to HBO? Are they still just sticking to the course, or are the Ellingsons going to start dictating what happens? Like in Westeros now.
Yeah, that's a good question because when Netflix was in the mix, they were already like commenting on what they were gonna do, basically. You had what's his name? Who's the Netflix
Sarandos.
CEO? Sarandos. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarandos was out there and he was telling people, he was like, here's what we're gonna do. And but we haven't gotten that yet with Paramount. We have no idea what their strategy is gonna be, if they're gonna keep it its own thing or if they're gonna try and fold it into Paramount Plus or
Because, dude, like,
what.
think
And
of this
so
unholy union. Showtime and HBO are siblings
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, that's so oh God.
It's
Yeah,
dirty. It's
yeah, it
dirty.
sucks. It really
Yeah.
does suck. I mean, at the end of the day, they're gonna follow the money. They're gonna follow the popularity. And, from what I understand, this show is massively successful, especially considering its smaller scope and its smaller budget. It's critically acclaimed, it's loved by the masses, and so they're gonna keep making it. And I think I'm glad that you brought it up when you were talking about it, because I think the magic trick that they have to pull off now is they need to avoid becoming Game of
Yeah.
Thrones, where, avoid becoming so dour and avoid becoming so self-serious, and you need to avoid juggling too many characters. And, you know, we don't need to scale the show up. We don't need to throw $250 million at it per season like they did with Game of
Mm,
Thrones. Let's keep it, small. Let's keep the budget manageable so
yeah.
that even if it's not as popular, they can keep making it. We don't need the episode 9 battle season every fucking season like they did with, that was always one of the stupidest things they did with Game of Thrones, where it's like, oh, it's episode 9, it's gonna be the big battle this season. Just stop that shit. Let's just keep it. Let's do like the books. Let's
Yeah.
just do what the books do, and yeah. So
Because
that's going to be the parlor trick.
like, I'll tell you right now, there's just the basic premises of what presumably the next few seasons are going to be. Dunk works for a knight who may or may not have lied about whose side he was on in the Blackfire Rebellion. And there's this lady who's mad about one of her peasants getting his face slashed. And he just gets involved in that dispute. And that's all I'll say about that. The next
Okay.
one, he has to be a mystery knight at like a tournament because he doesn't have like his sigil armor and everything. So he's just wearing some random shit and he's just competing as like a random plug-in for fun, basically. And Egg is going on a side quest because it seems like there's an awful lot of people here who fought with the Blackfires. And it's kind of like a weird little like Agatha Christie like murder mystery.
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
I can be down for that.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's not just going to be like what they did in season 1 was great, but we're not going to see it replicated year in and year out.
Mhm.
And then there's all the connective tissue that Martin has written that can like fill in the gaps in between, like the actual novellas. And then there's everything that he's given them about, like, because eventually this does end in tragedy, though. If we get all the way to Summerhall, I will be really astounded. But that is at the point where it will have no choice but to venture into the House of the Dragon. Like, this prophecy is what will save the Westeros from the others. Like, all like that shit is going to rear its ugly head, unfortunately. And it's going to have consequences. But I'll leave it at that. But we do know that Brienne of Tarth is Dunk's descendant. We know that for sure. Martin has confirmed that. It's not a cool factoid, people. We know it. The guy gets around. That's all I'll say. And I'll really quickly, just to close it out, I did watch Babygirl at long last, which is, the menopausal woman's answer to shame.
You didn't watch this on like Valentine's Day, did you?
No,
Okay,
actually.
good. Good.
That would have been really awkward. Because, yeah, first of all, what woman on this planet would get tired of fucking Antonio Banderas? Totally unrealistic, totally unbelievable. And it's like, I was trying to understand what the appeal was. And yeah, it is just that some women want to be treated like a dog. Like that is the whole message of this movie. And Antonio Banderas is a good husband for taking his whore wife back and treating her like a dog and degrading her and like controlling, like that is what this movie is about. It's about this intern like being taken advantage of by this rich lady CEO and then flipping it into him being the ultimate marriage counselor. And this is a sexy ass movie that does some really weird shit. And I champion that, but its message was horrible. That's morally I'm opposed, but it was a good watch. It was naughty. It was very naughty. I don't know how she got away with it. The Nicole
I'm glad
Kidman.
that the director, I think her name's, what is it, Helena Rain? Is that
Yeah.
how you say her name? I'm glad she got out of like Gen Z horror land because she did Bodies, 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 which
Oh, really?
I really did not like. I went to that in
Yeah.
theaters. I think I talked about it on an episode of the show that we recorded, but
Interesting.
I'm really glad that she got out of sort of Gen Z horror land and now she's presumably making things that are a little more
Yeah, this has
heady.
artistic value. Like
Yeah.
I like this is of a great tradition of transgressive you know woman tropes that
Mhm.
and the guy and the actor in that, the guy that does play the young lead, I can't think of his name. I think he's
Is
gonna
it is it Harris Dickinson
Dickerson or something like
or
that.
Dickerson?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's gonna be Lennon in the Beatles
Yeah.
movie that Sam Mendes is doing, the quartet of Beatles movies. But that's our digressions, for this week. Since we no longer do mentionables and whatnot. But this was a lot of fun. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us. Check us out on Letterboxd and everywhere else.
Yeah,
And
go check our letterbox to see the scores that we're gonna
yeah,
give because we will give the movies that we reviewed today numbered scores according to the letterbox format. So go over there and check out what we give those.
and next time around, I guess we still haven't quite decided what we're gonna do. So we will leave that a surprise for now.